The gunshots echoed through the vast Montana wilderness like thunder in a summer storm, jolting Yates Whitlock from his solitary reverie by the campfire. His sixth sense already telling him that this quiet evening in 1876 was about to change the course of his life forever. Grabbing his Winchester rifle and dousing the fire with a swift kick of dirt, the 30-year-old cowboy mounted his chestnut stallion with practiced ease. The animal, sensing its rider's urgency, needed no encouragement as they galloped toward the commotion. Hooves pounding against the hard-packed earth of the valley, cresting a small ridge, Yates pulled his horse to an abrupt halt. Below, in the amber light of dusk, a scene of violence unfolded. A stagecoach lay on its side, one wheel still spinning uselessly in the air. Two bodies, the driver and guard, he presumed lay motionless on the ground. But what captured his attention was the woman, her dress torn and mudded, running desperately toward the tree line with 3 mounted men in pursuit. "Here," Yates urged his horse forward, racing down the slope. The nearest pursuer turned at the sound, raising his pistol, but Yates was faster. His rifle cracked, and the man tumbled from his saddle. The other 2 assailants whirled around, momentarily forgetting their quarry. "Get behind those rocks, madam," Yates shouted to the woman, who hesitated only briefly before following his direction. He fired again, forcing the thieves to seek cover behind the overturned stagecoach. "You're outnumbered, cowboy," one of them called out. "This ain't your fight." "I'm making it my fight," Yates replied, dismounting and taking position behind a large boulder. "And from where I'm standing, looks like your numbers just got smaller." The ensuing gunfight was brief but intense. When the dust settled, one thief lay dead, another wounded and surrendering with hands raised, while the third had fled into the gathering darkness. Yates approached cautiously, keeping his rifle trained on the wounded man. "Tie yourself to that wheel," he ordered, tossing a length of rope. Once satisfied the survivor was secured, he turned his attention to the woman emerging hesitantly from her hiding place. She stood tall despite her ordeal, chin raised with quiet dignity. Her amber eyes, though wide with residual fear, held a fierce determination that caught Yates off guard. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins, cascading over shoulders that remained straight and unbowed. "Are you hurt, madam?" he asked, keeping a respectful distance. "Nothing serious," she replied, her voice steadier than he expected. "I'm Josephine Grayson. I owe you my life, Mr. Whitlock, Yates Whitlock." He tipped his hat slightly. "And you don't owe me anything, Miss Grayson." "Just doing what needed doing." Josephine glanced at the overturned stagecoach, her expression clouding. "Those poor men, the driver and guard, they tried to protect me. What were you carrying that these men wanted badly enough to kill for?" Yates asked, scanning the scattered luggage and broken crates. Josephine hesitated, then reached into a hidden pocket in her skirt. She withdrew a small leather pouch. "Land deeds," she said quietly. "For a silver mine and the surrounding property near Silver Creek, my father's legacy." The wounded thief laughed bitterly from his position by the stagecoach. "Worth more than you know, lady. Boss'll still get him one way or another." Yates frowned, studying the man. "Who's your boss?" The thief merely smiled, blood staining his teeth. "You'll find out soon enough." Josephine stepped closer to Yates, her expression grave. "I need to reach Silver Creek. I was headed there when this happened." Yates looked around at the darkening landscape. Night was falling rapidly, and they were at least 2 days' ride from Silver Creek. "We can't stay here. That third man might return with reinforcements." He gestured to his horse. "We'll ride together until we find somewhere safe for the night. Tomorrow we can figure out our next move. And him?" Josephine nodded toward the bound thief. "We'll take him along. He might have information we need." Yates approached his horse, adjusting the saddle. "Do you ride, Miss Grayson?" "I grew up on a ranch in Colorado," she said with unexpected pride. "I can ride anything with 4 legs." Despite the gravity of their situation, Yates felt a smile tug at his lips. "I'll keep that in mind." They salvaged what they could from the stagecoach, some food provisions, a canteen, and Josephine's small carpet bag. After securing the thief to his own horse, they set off into the gathering darkness, Josephine riding behind Yates, her arms tentatively encircling his waist. "I'm sorry about your father," Yates said after they'd been riding in silence for some time. She sighed, her breath warm against his shoulder. He died believing his mine would secure my future. These past 3 months, I've been fighting lawyers and claim jumpers alike to hold onto what's rightfully mine. And now someone's willing to kill for it, Yates observed grimly. The silver vein is rich, Josephine replied, but it's more than that. The land controls the water access for half the valley. Whoever owns it owns everything, Yates finished for her. I've seen water wars before. They get ugly fast. They rode until they found a small protected alcove among some rocks with a stream nearby. After securing the prisoner and tending to the horses, Yates built a small, sheltered fire while Josephine unpacked the meager food they'd salvaged. In the flickering firelight, Yates got his first clear look at Josephine Grayson. She was younger than he'd initially thought, perhaps 25, with features that spoke of both refinement and resilience. A small cut above her right eyebrow had dried, but bruises were beginning to form on her forearms where someone had grabbed her. "You should let me clean that cut," he offered, reaching for his canteen. She touched her forehead self-consciously. "It's nothing. I've had worse falling from horses as a girl." "Still," Yates insisted gently, dampening a clean handkerchief. With unexpected tenderness, he dabbed at the dried blood. Josephine winced slightly but remained still. "What brings a lone cowboy to this part of Montana, Mr. Whitlock?" "Yates," he corrected. "And I've been drifting for a while, worked some cattle drives, did some scouting for the army." He shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "Nothing worth talking about. I think a man who risks his life for a stranger has stories worth telling," Josephine countered softly. Yates withdrew his hand, folding the handkerchief carefully. "Some stories are best left buried, Miss Grayson." "Josephine," she insisted. "And I've found that buried things have a way of resurfacing when least expected." Their eyes met across the small fire, and something unspoken passed between them, recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits who understood loss and determination in equal measure. The moment was broken by the prisoner's harsh laugh. "Touching," he sneered. "Enjoy it while it lasts. By this time tomorrow, you'll both be dead." Yates moved quickly, crouching beside the bound man. "Who sent you?" "Someone with enough money and men to make sure this job gets finished," the thief replied defiantly. "A name," Yates pressed, his voice hardening. The man smirked. "Victor Bellamy. Means nothing to you, I bet, but in Silver Creek his word is law." Josephine's sharp intake of breath confirmed the name's significance. "Bellamy's been trying to buy my father's claim since before he died," she explained to Yates. "When I refused to sell, he threatened legal action, claiming my father had borrowed money using the mine as collateral. Had he?" Yates asked directly. "No," Josephine said firmly. "My father would never have risked our family legacy that way. Bellamy's lying," the thief chuckled. "Doesn't matter what's true, matters what Bellamy can make people believe. And in Silver Creek, folks believe what he tells them to." Yates studied Josephine's determined face, weighing their options. "We're still 2 days from Silver Creek, assuming we push hard. Bellamy will have men searching for you." "For us," Josephine corrected him. "You're involved now, whether you intended to be or not." Yates nodded grimly. "Get some rest. I'll take first watch." As Josephine settled down, wrapping herself in the blanket he'd offered, Yates positioned himself against a boulder where he could watch both her and the prisoner. The night was clear, stars scattered across the vast Montana sky like silver dust. He hadn't planned on getting involved in someone else's fight. 8 years of drifting since the war had taught him the value of keeping to himself, of not forming attachments. Yet something about Josephine Grayson, her courage, her determination, perhaps even her vulnerability, had compelled him to act when he heard those shots. Watching her now, sleeping fitfully by the dying fire, Yates felt something stir within him that he'd thought long dead, a sense of purpose, of rightness. Whatever troubles lay ahead in Silver Creek, he knew with sudden certainty that he would see this through. Not just because it was the right thing to do, but because in Josephine's fight, he recognized echoes of his own unresolved past. The next morning dawned bright and crisp. Yates, who had eventually allowed himself a few hours of restless sleep after Josephine insisted on taking a watch, awoke to find her already up, heating coffee over a small, smokeless fire. "You're good at that," he observed, nodding toward the nearly invisible flames. My father taught me, she replied, passing him a tin cup of strong black coffee. He said a visible fire might as well be a beacon saying, "Come rob me." Smart man, Yates commented, taking a grateful sip. Their prisoner, who had spent an uncomfortable night tied to a tree, glared at them. You gonna feed me, or am I supposed to starve before Bellamy's men find us? Josephine silently prepared a plate of cold biscuits and jerky, placing it near the man's bound hands so he could feed himself awkwardly. We need to decide what to do with him, she said quietly to Yates. We can't keep dragging him along. Yates nodded thoughtfully. There's a trading post about half a day's ride from here. The owner, Old Pete, is trustworthy. He can hold our friend until the territorial marshal makes his rounds. And then we continue to Silver Creek, Josephine asked. Not directly, Yates replied. We'll need to circle around, approach from the north, less chance of running into Bellamy's men that way. Josephine studied him with newfound appreciation. You sound like you've done this sort of thing before. A shadow crossed Yates's face. Let's just say I learned a thing or two about evasion during the war. They broke camp efficiently, leaving minimal evidence of their presence. With the prisoner mounted on his own horse, reins tied to Yates's saddle, they set off at a steady pace, keeping to rough terrain where possible to make tracking difficult. As they rode, Josephine told Yates more about her situation. Her father, Edmund Grayson, had discovered the silver deposit 5 years earlier, building a modest operation that had sustained them comfortably. Upon his unexpected death from pneumonia 3 months ago, Josephine had discovered that their financial situation was more precarious than she'd realized, with the mine requiring significant investment to reach the richest veins. Bellamy offered to buy the property for a fraction of its worth, she explained. When I refused, strange things began happening. Equipment broke, miners quit without explanation, supplies didn't arrive. He was squeezing you, Yates observed. Making the mine impossible to operate so you'd have no choice but to sell. Josephine nodded grimly. I traveled to Helena to secure financing from a banker who'd been my father's friend. I was on my way back with the loan papers when the stagecoach was attacked. So Bellamy's desperate now, Yates concluded. You've outmaneuvered him, and he's resorted to outright theft and murder. Which means he'll be even more dangerous when he discovers I've survived, Josephine said quietly. They reached the trading post by mid-afternoon, a weathered collection of log buildings nestled in a small clearing. Old Pete, a grizzled veteran with a pronounced limp, greeted Yates with gruff familiarity. Didn't expect to see you again after last season, the old man said, eyeing Josephine and the bound prisoner curiously. Circumstances change, Pete, Yates replied. We need a favor. After explaining their situation with judicious omissions about the precise nature of Josephine's property, Yates arranged for the prisoner to be held until the marshal's arrival. Pete, who harbored no love for Victor Bellamy or his methods, readily agreed. Been hearing stories about Bellamy's reach extending beyond Silver Creek, Pete told them as they prepared to depart. Man's building himself an empire out here, buying judges, threatening competitors. You watch yourselves. We'll need supplies, Yates said, changing the subject. And if anyone comes asking after us. Never saw you, Pete finished with a wink. Just like you never saw that Gatling gun I've got stashed behind the counter that the Army sure would like back. Josephine raised an eyebrow at Yates after they'd departed the trading post with fresh supplies. Interesting friends you have, she remarked. Yates shrugged. Pete's a good man, lost his leg at Shiloh, government pension never came through so he makes do out here. And the Gatling gun, best not to ask, Yates advised with the hint of a smile. Out here, everyone's got secrets they'd rather keep. Including you, Josephine asked perceptively. Yates's expression closed. Especially me. They made camp that night in a dense grove of pines, the surrounding trees providing both shelter and concealment. After a simple meal, Yates pulled out a rough map he'd sketched based on Pete's information. Silver Creek's here, he said, pointing. Bellamy's ranch headquarters is south of town. He's got men stationed along the main approaches from the south and east, expecting you to return that way. So we circle north and west, Josephine nodded, tracing the route with her finger. Her hand brushed against Yates's and both paused momentarily at the contact. "It'll add another day to our journey," Yates continued, his voice a touch gruffer than before. "But it improves our chances of reaching town undetected." "And once we're there," Josephine asked, "what then? You mentioned a banker friend of your father's. Is there anyone else in Silver Creek you trust?" Josephine considered. "Sheriff Donovan was always fair with my father. And Maggie Sullivan runs the boarding house. She's been like family to me since my mother died." "Good," Yates nodded. "We'll need allies. Bellamy may control many in town, but not everyone, not if he's as ruthless as he seems." "What about you?" Josephine asked quietly. "Once we reach Silver Creek, what then?" Yates met her gaze steadily. "I'll see this through, Josephine. I promise to get you safely to Silver Creek, and I mean to keep that promise." "You've already done more than most would," she said. "You could have ridden away after delivering me to town." "No one would blame you." "I would," Yates replied simply. In the flickering light of their small fire, Josephine studied the cowboy who had so unexpectedly entered her life. His face, weathered by sun and hardship, revealed little, but his eyes, deep blue and haunted, told a different story. "What happened to you, Yates Whitlock?" she asked softly. "What are you running from?" For a long moment, Yates remained silent, staring into the flames. Just as Josephine thought he wouldn't answer, he spoke. "I was a captain in the Union Army," he began, his voice low. "Cavalry. After Appomattox, they asked me to stay on, help pacify the frontier. I did for a time." He paused, taking a deep breath. 3 years ago, my unit was ordered to relocate a Cheyenne village. The people were peaceful, had signed treaties, but someone wanted their land." His hands clenched. "When they refused to leave, my commanding officer ordered us to force them out. Things escalated. The women and children were gathering water at a creek when the shooting started," Yates continued, his voice hollow. "I tried to stop it, ordered my men to hold fire, but the colonel countermanded me. 27 dead, including 11 children." Josephine's hand covered her mouth in horror. "I filed a report, testified against the colonel," Yates said. "Military tribunal cleared him. Said I was insubordinate, dishonorable, discharged me. The colonel got a promotion." "That's why you've been drifting," Josephine realized. "You lost faith in the system you served." Yates nodded grimly. "I lost faith in myself, in my ability to judge right from wrong. So I've kept to myself, taken odd jobs, moved on before getting attached to anyone or anyplace. Until now," Josephine said softly. Their eyes met across the fire, and something unspoken passed between them, an understanding, a connection forged in shared adversity. "Get some rest," Yates said finally, breaking the moment. "I'll take first watch tonight." As Josephine settled into her bedroll, she found herself studying Yates's silhouette against the starlit sky. The cowboy who had saved her life carried wounds deeper than any physical scar, yet he had risked everything for a stranger. In that moment, Josephine Grayson made a silent promise. Whatever battles lay ahead in Silver Creek, Yates Whitlock would not face them alone. The following days brought increasingly difficult terrain as they circled around to approach Silver Creek from the north. They traversed narrow mountain passes and dense forests, always alert for signs of pursuit. Yates's skills as a tracker and woodsman impressed Josephine, who found herself relying on his steady presence more than she cared to admit. On the afternoon of the third day, since leaving the trading post, they crested a ridge that offered their first view of Silver Creek in the valley below. The town was larger than Yates had expected, a proper settlement with a main street lined with wooden buildings, smaller structures scattered outward, and in the distance, the dark mouth of the mine that had started this conflict. "Home," Josephine said softly, a complicated mix of emotions in her voice. Yates studied the town through his field glasses. "We'll wait until dusk to go in, less chance of being spotted that way." They made their way down the slope as daylight faded, approaching the northern edge of town, where scattered homesteads gave way to more densely packed buildings. Following Josephine's directions, they skirted the main street, taking back alleys until they reached a modest 2-story house set back from the others. "Maggie Sullivan's boarding house," Josephine explained as they tethered their horses behind the building. "If anyone will help us, it's Maggie." They approached the back door cautiously. Josephine knocked in a distinctive pattern, 2 quick taps, pause, 3 more. After a moment, the door opened a crack and a woman's face appeared, illuminated by lamplight. "Josephine," the woman gasped, flinging the door wide. "Dear God, we thought you were dead." Maggie Sullivan was a sturdy woman in her 50s, with iron gray hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She pulled Josephine into a fierce embrace before ushering both travelers inside, quickly closing and locking the door behind them. "Word came 3 days ago that the stagecoach was attacked," Maggie explained, leading them to a cozy kitchen at the rear of the house. "The bodies of the driver and guard were brought in, but they said you'd been taken." "Taken?" Josephine frowned. "No, I escaped, thanks to Mr. Whitlock here." She gestured to Yates, who had removed his hat and stood awkwardly by the door. Maggie assessed him with a penetrating gaze. "Then the town owes you a debt, Mr. Whitlock, though you've likely made powerful enemies by interfering." "So I gather," Yates replied dryly. "What's been happening in town since news of the attack?" Maggie's expression darkened as she poured them both cups of hot coffee. "Bellamy's been busy. Called an emergency town meeting, claimed the mine was legally his due to debts owed by Edmund. Produced papers supposedly signed by Josephine surrendering the claim." "What?" Josephine exclaimed. "That's preposterous. I never signed anything." "Of course not," Maggie agreed. "But with you presumed dead or missing, who could contradict him?" Sheriff Donovan questioned the timing, but Bellamy's got the mayor and judge in his pocket. "Has he taken possession of the mine?" Yates asked. "Not yet," Maggie replied. "Donovan insisted on waiting the customary 7 days in case you turned up. That gives us 3 more days before Bellamy can legally claim the property. 3 days to prove Bellamy orchestrated the attack and forged those documents," Josephine said grimly. "And to keep you alive that long," Yates added. "Once word gets out you've returned, Bellamy won't waste time with subtlety." Maggie nodded in agreement. "You can stay here tonight." "I've no borders at present. Bellamy's been pressuring businesses not to deal with me since I spoke up at the town meeting." "We've put you at risk just by coming here," Josephine realized with dismay. Maggie waved away her concern. "I've been standing up to bullies since before Victor Bellamy had hair on his chin. Now, you both look exhausted. Eat, then rest. We'll make plans in the morning." After a hearty meal, the first proper food they'd had in days, Maggie showed them to separate rooms upstairs. Yates found himself in a simple but comfortable chamber, the bed more inviting than any he'd slept in for months. Still, he took the precaution of positioning a chair under the doorknob and keeping his revolver within reach. Sleep came fitfully, his mind racing with possible strategies and contingencies. Sometime past midnight, a soft knock at his door brought him instantly alert. "Yates, it's me," Josephine's voice came quietly through the door. He removed the chair and opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, wrapped in a borrowed robe, her hair loose around her shoulders. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see those men coming after me, hear the gunshots." Without a word, Yates stepped aside, allowing her to enter. She sat on the edge of his bed, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I keep thinking about what you said," she continued softly. "About losing faith in your ability to judge right from wrong. I understand that now, in a way I didn't before." Yates leaned against the wall, watching her. "How so?" "My father was everything to me," Josephine explained. "Honest, principled, fair. But since his death, I've discovered debts I didn't know about, agreements with minors that seemed exploitative, papers in his desk suggesting he might have considered Bellamy's offer." She looked up at Yates, her eyes troubled. "What if I'm fighting for something that isn't what I thought it was? What if my father wasn't the man I believed him to be?" Yates moved to sit beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "We're all complicated, Josephine. Your father could have been both the good man you knew and someone who made mistakes, even considered compromises he wasn't proud of." "How do I know what's right anymore?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You trust yourself," Yates replied simply. "Whatever your father may or may not have done, your instincts about Bellamy are sound. A man who sends killers after a woman isn't interested in justice or fair business." Josephine nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said, meeting his gaze. "Not just for saving my life, but for believing in me when I'm not sure I believe in myself." In the dim moonlight filtering through the curtains, her face was both vulnerable and determined, a combination that stirred something protective and admiring in Yates's chest. Without conscious thought, he reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The simple gesture hung between them, charged with unspoken possibility. For a moment, Yates thought she might lean toward him, but instead she stood, gathering her robe more tightly around herself. "I should let you rest," she said, though her eyes lingered on his. "Tomorrow will bring challenges enough." After she left, Yates remained sitting on the edge of the bed, his hand still warm from the brief contact with her skin. 8 years of deliberate detachment were crumbling in the face of something he hadn't expected, and wasn't sure he deserved connection, purpose, and the stirrings of feelings he'd thought long buried beneath the rubble of his past. Morning brought clear skies and a strategy session around Maggie's kitchen table. Sheriff Donovan had been quietly summoned and arrived through the back door, his weathered face grave as he greeted Josephine with evident relief. "Glad to see you alive, Miss Grayson," he said, shaking her hand firmly before turning to assess Yates with a lawman's practiced eye. "You the one who stepped in at the stagecoach?" Yates nodded, meeting the sheriff's gaze steadily. "Yates Whitlock." "Obliged to you," Donovan said simply. "Now we've got ourselves a situation. Bellamy's claiming legal right to the Grayson mine based on these." He produced several documents from inside his coat. Josephine examined them, her expression darkening. "This is not my signature," she declared. "And this loan agreement, my father would never have borrowed such a sum, especially not using the mine as collateral." "I believe you," Donovan assured her. "But Bellamy's got Judge Harmon convinced. Unless we can prove these are forgeries, he'll rule in Bellamy's favor in 3 days' time." "What about the attack on the stagecoach?" Yates asked. "We captured one of the attackers. He admitted Bellamy sent them." "Hearsay," Donovan sighed. "Without the prisoner here to testify, he's at Old Pete's trading post," Yates interrupted, waiting for the territorial marshal. Hope flickered in Donovan's eyes. "That changes things. If we could get him to testify, Bellamy would have him killed before he said a word," Maggie interjected practically. "We need more than one man's testimony." "The banker in Helena," Josephine suggested. "Mr. Finch. He approved my loan based on the mine's legitimate value. He can verify that my father never took a loan from Bellamy. Getting a telegram to Helena and Finch back here would take days," Donovan pointed out. "Time we don't have." "Then we need to find evidence here," Yates concluded. "Someone who helped Bellamy forge those documents or who knows about his plan." "Jasper Wilkes," Maggie said suddenly. "Bellamy's bookkeeper. Man's a nervous sort, drinks too much at the Silver Dollar on Saturday nights. Been hinting to anyone who'll listen that he's sitting on secrets that could bring down powerful men." "Can you arrange a meeting?" Yates asked. Donovan nodded thoughtfully. "Wilkes trusts me. I've looked the other way on his drunkenness a time or two. I could approach him, sound him out." "Meanwhile, I need to show myself in town," Josephine declared. "Let people know I'm alive and contesting Bellamy's claim." "That's too dangerous," Yates objected immediately. Bellamy will what?" Josephine challenged. "Kill me in broad daylight in front of witnesses." "He operates through manipulation and shadows. If I publicly denounce him, he'll be forced to respond legally, at least initially." "She's right," Donovan agreed reluctantly. "A public appearance complicates things for Bellamy, makes it harder for him to act overtly." "I don't like it," Yates insisted, meeting Josephine's determined gaze. "I didn't ask if you liked it," she replied softly. "This is my fight, Yates. I appreciate everything you've done, but I won't hide while someone steals what's rightfully mine." The quiet steel in her voice reminded Yates of why he'd been drawn to her from the beginning. This wasn't a damsel awaiting rescue. This was a woman of courage and conviction, willing to risk everything for what she believed was right. "Then we do it together," he said finally. "You make your public appearance, but I'll be with you, watching your back." The plan took shape quickly. Josephine would attend Sunday services at the town church, making a very public return from the dead. Afterward, she would announce her intention to contest Bellamy's claim at a gathering outside the church. Meanwhile, Sheriff Donovan would approach Wilkes, attempting to secure evidence of Bellamy's forgeries and criminal activities. That afternoon, Maggie helped Josephine prepare, lending her a suitable dress and helping arrange her hair. Yates cleaned his weapons and studied a map of the town, identifying potential trouble spots and escape routes. When Josephine emerged from her room on Sunday morning, Yates found himself momentarily speechless. Dressed in a deep blue gown that complemented her amber eyes, her dark hair arranged elegantly beneath a modest hat, she projected both dignity and determination. "You clean up well, Mr. Whitlock," she observed with a small smile, noting that he had shaved and donned the one clean shirt from his saddlebags. "As do you, Miss Grayson," he replied, offering his arm. "Shall we give Bellamy the surprise of his life?" They walked to the church together, Maggie slightly ahead to draw less attention. As they approached the white clapboard building, conversations halted, heads turned, and whispers erupted. Josephine held her head high, acknowledging greetings with dignified nods as they proceeded down the aisle to a pew near the front. Victor Bellamy was already seated in the front row, a large man in an expensive suit, his silver-streaked black hair slicked back from a face that might have been handsome if not for the coldness of his eyes. When he turned and saw Josephine, his momentary shock quickly transformed into calculating assessment as his gaze shifted to Yates. The service proceeded with an undercurrent of tension, the minister's words about resurrection taking on unintended significance. When the congregation filed out afterward, people gathered in the churchyard, openly curious about Josephine's miraculous return. Standing on the church steps, Josephine addressed the assembled townspeople, her voice clear and unwavering. "Many of you have heard that I was killed in a stagecoach robbery," she began. "As you can see, those reports were greatly exaggerated. What is true, however, is that the attack was no random act of violence, but a deliberate attempt to prevent my return to Silver Creek with legal documents securing my ownership of the Grayson mine." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Bellamy, standing at the edge of the gathering, maintained a facade of pleasant surprise, though Yates noted the tightness around his mouth. "Furthermore," Josephine continued, "I categorically deny signing any documents transferring ownership of the mine to Mr. Bellamy or acknowledging any debt to him. Such documents, if they exist, are forgeries, and I intend to prove this before Judge Harmon at the scheduled hearing." "Miss Grayson," Bellamy called out, his voice carrying easily over the crowd, "what a relief to see you safe and sound. These are serious accusations. You're making accusations that may be attributed to the trauma you've suffered." "My mind is perfectly clear, Mr. Bellamy," Josephine replied coldly, "as is my memory of my father's affairs. He never borrowed money from you using the mine as collateral." Bellamy spread his hands in a gesture of regretful understanding. "Your father was a proud man. He may not have shared all his financial difficulties with you. The documents speak for themselves." "Forged documents speak only of the forger's desperation," Josephine countered. A tense silence fell over the churchyard. Bellamy's smile never wavered, but his eyes hardened dangerously. "We'll let the judge decide," he said finally. "In the meantime, Miss Grayson, I'm relieved you've returned safely. Silver Creek wouldn't be the same without you." The implied threat beneath his polite words was not lost on anyone present. As the crowd dispersed, Bellamy approached, flanked by two men whose hands hovered near concealed weapons. "A word of advice," he said quietly, "for Josephine and Yates's ears only. The mine will be mine one way or another. The smart play would be to accept my offer, which still stands, and leave town with your life and a tidy sum." "Is that what you told the men you sent to attack the stagecoach?" Yates asked evenly. Bellamy's gaze shifted to him, calculating. "I don't believe we've been introduced." "Yates Whitlock," he replied, matching Bellamy's false cordiality. "I happened upon the stagecoach after your men had killed the driver and guard." "A fortunate coincidence for Miss Grayson," Bellamy observed, "though I must correct your misapprehension. I had nothing to do with any attack." "Tell that to your man we captured," Yates said. He was quite talkative once he realized his partners had abandoned him. A flash of genuine concern crossed Bellamy's face before his mask of civility returned. Wild accusations without evidence are dangerous, Mr. Whitlock. Especially for drifters with no standing in the community. Are you threatening me, Mr. Bellamy? Yates asked, his hand casually resting near his holstered revolver. Merely offering the same friendly advice I gave Miss Grayson, Bellamy replied. Silver Creek can be unwelcoming to those who disrupt the natural order of things. With a tip of his hat, Bellamy departed, his men following closely. He's rattled, Josephine observed quietly as they watched him go. He didn't expect me to return, and certainly not with a witness to the attack. Rattled men make mistakes, Yates agreed. But they're also dangerous. We need to be careful. They spent the remainder of the day at Maggie's boarding house, awaiting word from Sheriff Donovan about his meeting with Wilkes. As evening approached with no message, concern grew. Something's wrong, Yates said finally, strapping on his gun belt. Donovan should have made contact by now. Where are you going? Josephine asked, rising from her chair by the window. To find out what happened, Yates replied. You stay here with Maggie, keep the doors locked. No, Josephine said firmly. We agreed to do this together. Before Yates could argue, a rapid knock at the back door interrupted them. Maggie answered cautiously, then quickly ushered in Sheriff Donovan. The lawman's face was grim, his left arm hanging awkwardly at his side. Wilkes is dead, he announced without preamble. Found him behind the silver dollar with his throat cut, and I got this for my troubles. He indicated his arm, where blood seeped through his shirt sleeve. You're hit, Maggie exclaimed, already gathering bandages and whiskey. Just a graze, Donovan dismissed. Bellamy's men were waiting. They knew I was meeting Wilkes. Which means Bellamy has someone feeding him information, Yates concluded darkly. Or Wilkes told him, Josephine suggested, hoping to bargain for his life. Doesn't matter now, Donovan winced as Maggie cleaned his wound. Without Wilkes or those documents, we've got nothing solid against Bellamy. Not nothing, Yates corrected. We still have the captured thief's testimony, and Josephine's alive to contest the forged signature. It might not be enough, Donovan warned. Judge Harmon's been in Bellamy's pocket for years. Then we need something Bellamy can't challenge or dismiss, Josephine said determinedly, and I think I know where to find it. All eyes turned to her expectantly. My father kept a journal, she explained. He recorded everything: business transactions, mining operations, personal observations. If Bellamy ever approached him about selling or borrowing against the mine, it would be in that journal. Where is it? Yates asked. In my father's desk at the mine office, Josephine replied. I didn't think to take it when I left for Helena. Bellamy's men have been watching the mine, Donovan warned. Getting in won't be easy. I know another way, Josephine insisted. Through the old tunnel that connects to the creek bed. My father showed me years ago. It was an emergency exit in case of cave-ins. Yates considered this information. When's the hearing scheduled? Tomorrow noon, Donovan replied. Then we go tonight, Yates decided, under cover of darkness. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Josephine would guide Yates through the hidden tunnel entrance by the creek, leading to the mine office where her father's journal was kept. Sheriff Donovan, despite his injury, would create a diversion to draw Bellamy's watchmen away from the area, while Maggie would prepare horses for a quick escape if needed. They waited until well after midnight, when the town had fallen silent and only a few lamps still burned in distant windows. Dressed in dark clothing, Josephine led Yates along the creek bed, moving cautiously through the shadows until they reached a dense thicket that concealed the tunnel entrance. It hasn't been used in years, she whispered as they cleared away brush to reveal a low wooden door set into the hillside. I hope it's still passable. The tunnel was narrow and damp, requiring them to proceed in a crouch, guided only by the faint light of a hooded lantern. The air grew increasingly stale as they advanced, carrying the mineral scent of silver ore and old timber. After what seemed an eternity of slow progress, they reached a junction where the tunnel widened slightly. Josephine paused, orienting herself. The main shaft is that way, she said, pointing left. The office is up through there. She indicated a crude ladder leading to a trapdoor in the ceiling. Yates went first, climbing carefully and lifting the trapdoor a fraction to peer into the space above. Finding it dark and apparently empty, he pushed the door fully open and pulled himself up, then helped Josephine follow. They found themselves in a small storage room adjacent to the main office. Dust covered everything, suggesting the space had been undisturbed since operations had slowed following Edmund Grayson's death. "The desk is through here," Josephine whispered, leading the way into the larger office. Moonlight filtered through dirty windows, casting long shadows across a substantial desk positioned beneath a large map of the mining claim. Josephine moved directly to the desk, trying the drawers. "Locked," she murmured in frustration. "Stand back," Yates said, drawing his knife. With careful pressure, he worked the blade into the seam of the center drawer, manipulating it until the simple lock gave way. Josephine quickly rifled through the contents, pushing aside papers and ledgers until she found what she sought: a leather-bound journal with her father's initials embossed on the cover. "This is it," she breathed, clutching the book to her chest. "Now we just need to." The click of a revolver's hammer being pulled back froze them both. "Now you just need to hand that over," came Victor Bellamy's voice from the doorway. He stood silhouetted against the dim light from the outer office, his revolver aimed steadily at Josephine. Two armed men flanked him. "I wondered if you might try something like this," Bellamy continued conversationally. "So I had men watching all approaches to the mine. Your diversion with the sheriff was clever, but predictable." Yates's mind raced, calculating angles and distances, assessing whether he could draw and fire before Bellamy's men reacted. "Don't even think about it, Whitlock," Bellamy warned, noting the subtle shift in Yates's stance. "You're good, I'll grant you that. But not good enough to take all three of us before one of us puts a bullet in Miss Grayson." "What do you want, Bellamy?" Josephine demanded, her voice steadier than Yates would have expected given the circumstances. "What I've always wanted," Bellamy replied. "The mine, the water rights. Control of this valley." Edmund understood the potential here, but he lacked vision and ambition. "My father understood that water belongs to everyone," Josephine retorted. "Not just those who can afford to pay your extortionate rates." Bellamy smiled coldly. "Principles are a luxury, Miss Grayson. One your father could ill afford toward the end. Did you know he approached me about selling, 6 months before his death? The price was agreeable, but he insisted on conditions: water access for small ranchers, jobs for his miners. Sentimental nonsense." "You're lying," Josephine said, though doubt flickered briefly across her face. "Am I?" Bellamy gestured toward the journal she held. "Why don't you check his entries for November last year? I believe you'll find I'm telling the truth." Against her better judgment, Josephine opened the journal, flipping to the date Bellamy had mentioned. In the dim light, she could just make out her father's neat handwriting. "Met with Bellamy today regarding his offer. The sum is fair, more than enough to secure Josephine's future. His development plans for the valley are ambitious, potentially beneficial for the town's growth. Yet I cannot reconcile myself to his methods or his character. If I sell, I must ensure legal protections for water access and employment guarantees." Bellamy balked but will consider. "I pray I am making the right decision." Josephine looked up, her expression complex. "He considered selling," she admitted, "but he didn't, and he certainly never borrowed money from you using the mine as collateral." "A technicality," Bellamy shrugged. "The outcome will be the same." "Now the journal, if you please." "And then what?" Yates asked, drawing Bellamy's attention. "You kill us both, claim we were trespassing." "Nothing so dramatic," Bellamy replied. "Miss Grayson will simply have a change of heart. Tomorrow at the hearing, she'll acknowledge her father's debt and accept my generous settlement offer. You, Mr. Whitlock, will disappear. How and where is entirely up to you, but I suggest it be far from Montana territory." "And if we refuse?" Josephine challenged. Bellamy sighed as if disappointed by her stubbornness. "Then, regrettably, there will be another tragic accident at the Grayson mine. 2 bodies discovered after a cave-in. Such a dangerous profession, mining." The cold calculation in his voice left no doubt that he would follow through on his threat. Yates's eyes met Josephine's, a silent communication passing between them. In that moment, he saw not fear but resolve in her gaze, and he understood her intention perfectly. "I'll need to make a copy of the relevant pages," Josephine said, turning back to Bellamy. "To verify the debt for the judge." "By all means," Bellamy replied with false generosity, gesturing to the desk. "Ink and paper are in the top drawer, I believe." As Josephine moved toward the desk, placing the journal down and opening the drawer, Yates shifted slightly, positioning himself to act. "You know, Bellamy," he said conversationally, "there's something I've been wondering." "And what might that be?" Bellamy asked, his attention divided between Yates and Josephine. "How a man like you sleeps at night," Yates replied. "Ordering the deaths of innocent people, stealing what isn't yours, lying to an entire town." Bellamy's smile was cold. "Quite comfortably, on the finest feather mattress money can buy. The weak have always served the purposes of the strong, Mr. Whitlock. It's the natural order of things." "There's nothing natural about what you've done," Josephine said, her hand closing around something in the drawer. "Perhaps not," Bellamy conceded, "but it is profitable. And in the end, profit is what builds empires." "Not this time," Josephine declared, suddenly whirling around. In one fluid motion, she flung a cloud of fine silver ore dust from the drawer directly into the faces of Bellamy and his men. The unexpected attack caught them off guard, causing them to recoil and fire blindly. Yates seized the moment, drawing and firing in one practiced movement. His first shot caught the henchman on the left, dropping him instantly. Bellamy and the second man returned fire as they retreated toward the door, bullets splintering wood around Yates as he pushed Josephine down behind the solid oak desk. "The tunnel," he shouted, covering their retreat with another shot that forced Bellamy to duck into the outer office. They scrambled back to the storage room, Josephine clutching the journal as Yates fired one last shot to discourage pursuit. Within moments, they were through the trapdoor and descending the ladder into the darkness of the tunnel below. "Move," Yates urged as they heard Bellamy's enraged shouts above. They ran crouched through the narrow passage, guided by memory more than sight as they'd been forced to abandon the lantern in their hasty escape. Behind them, a shot rang out, followed by the sound of pursuit. Bellamy had found the tunnel entrance and was following, his curses echoing off the stone walls. "There's a side passage ahead," Josephine gasped as they ran. "It leads to an air shaft, narrower, but it might slow them down." They found the junction by touch, turning into the even more confined space of the secondary tunnel. The air grew thinner, dust filling their lungs as they pushed forward, the sounds of pursuit gradually receding. After what seemed an eternity of stumbling through darkness, they glimpsed a faint glow ahead, moonlight filtering through the exit. They emerged into the cool night air beside the creek, gasping and filthy but alive. "We need to move," Yates said urgently. "Bellamy will have men searching everywhere once he gets out." They made their way swiftly back toward town, keeping to shadows and avoiding the main streets. When they reached Maggie's boarding house, they found both her and Sheriff Donovan waiting anxiously. "Thank God," Maggie exclaimed, ushering them inside. "We heard gunshots from the mine, feared the worst." "Bellamy was waiting for us," Josephine explained breathlessly, placing her father's journal on the table. "But we got what we came for." "And Bellamy?" Donovan asked, his expression grim. "Very much alive and very angry," Yates replied. "He'll be coming for us." "Not tonight, he won't," Donovan said with unexpected satisfaction. "While you two were at the mine, I had my deputy arrest Bellamy's men for the murder of Jasper Wilkes. They're locked up tight, and I've deputized some reliable townsmen to guard the jail." "That won't hold Bellamy for long," Yates cautioned. "It doesn't need to," Josephine said, opening the journal to show them specific entries. "Just until the hearing tomorrow. My father documented everything: his meetings with Bellamy, the offers, the threats, and most importantly, there's no mention of any loan using the mine as collateral." "Will it be enough?" Maggie asked doubtfully. Judge Harmon values his reputation," Donovan interrupted. "With enough public attention on the case, he'll have to follow the evidence, Bellamy's influence notwithstanding. Then we need to ensure maximum public attention," Yates concluded. "By morning, everyone in Silver Creek should know about Bellamy's forgeries and the attack on the stagecoach." They worked through the night, Maggie visiting trusted neighbors, Donovan speaking with businessmen who had grown weary of Bellamy's increasing demands, Josephine copying relevant journal entries as evidence. Yates remained at the boarding house, watchful and ready, his rifle across his knees as he guarded both Josephine and their hard-won evidence. In the quiet hours before dawn, Josephine finally set down her pen, flexing her cramped fingers. "It's done," she said softly. "Everything we need to present to Judge Harmon. You should rest," Yates suggested, noting the dark circles beneath her eyes. "Tomorrow will be challenging." Josephine shook her head. "I'm too wound up to sleep." She hesitated, then added, "I keep thinking about what my father wrote. He really did consider selling to Bellamy. To secure your future," Yates reminded her gently, "and only with conditions that would protect the community. That speaks to his character, not against it, I suppose," Josephine sighed. "I just always thought he would fight to keep the mine, no matter what." "Sometimes fighting isn't about never yielding," Yates said thoughtfully. "It's about knowing what's truly worth protecting. Your father wanted to protect you and the community. The mine was just land and silver to him." Josephine studied him with newfound appreciation. When did a drifting cowboy get so wise about such things? A ghost of a smile touched Yates's lips. "When a certain stubborn mine owner showed me that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the odds." Their eyes met across the room, the connection between them deepening in the shared quiet of the night. Without needing to speak it aloud, both recognized that something had changed between them, that, in the midst of danger and uncertainty, they had found in each other something neither had expected to discover. Morning arrived all too quickly, bringing with it the final confrontation they had been working toward. The courthouse, little more than a large room above the town hall, was packed to capacity, with townspeople spilling out into the hallway and street beyond. Word had spread rapidly through Silver Creek, creating an atmosphere of tense anticipation. Judge Harmon, a thin man with spectacles and a perpetual frown, called the proceedings to order, eyeing the crowd with evident displeasure. "This hearing," he announced, "concerns the matter of ownership of the Grayson mining claim. Mr. Bellamy has presented documents indicating that the late Edmund Grayson borrowed a substantial sum, using said claim as collateral. Miss Grayson contests the validity of these documents." Bellamy sat at one table, immaculately dressed despite the events of the previous night, his lawyer beside him. His confidence appeared undiminished, though his eyes narrowed dangerously when they fell on Josephine and Yates at the opposing table. "Mr. Bellamy will present his case first," Judge Harmon declared. Bellamy's lawyer rose, a slick man in an expensive suit who presented the loan documents with flourish, explaining in detail how Edmund Grayson had fallen on hard times and turned to his friend Victor Bellamy for assistance. "Furthermore," the lawyer concluded, "we have Miss Grayson's signed acknowledgement of this debt, dated just prior to her journey to Helena." Judge Harmon examined the documents carefully. "Miss Grayson, do you wish to respond to these claims?" Josephine stood, her composure admirable despite the stakes. "Yes, Your Honor, I categorically deny signing any such acknowledgement. The signature on that document is a forgery." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. "A serious accusation," Judge Harmon noted. "Do you have evidence to support it?" "I do, Your Honor," Josephine replied, presenting her father's journal. "This is my father's business journal, in which he recorded all financial transactions and business meetings. There is no mention of any loan from Mr. Bellamy using the mine as collateral." The judge accepted the journal, leafing through the pages Josephine had marked. His frown deepened as he read. "This is concerning," he admitted reluctantly. "However, it's possible your father simply didn't record this particular transaction." "There's more, Your Honor," Josephine continued. 3 days ago, the stagecoach I was traveling on was attacked. The driver and guard were killed, and I would have been too if not for Mr. Whitlock's intervention." "Objection," Bellamy's lawyer exclaimed. "This is irrelevant to the matter at hand." "On the contrary," Sheriff Donovan interjected, stepping forward. "One of the attackers was captured and has signed a statement implicating Mr. Bellamy as the one who hired them to intercept Miss Grayson and take the legitimate loan documents she was carrying from Helena." The courtroom erupted in shocked exclamations. Judge Harmon banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. "This is preposterous," Bellamy declared, rising to his feet. "These accusations are nothing but desperate attempts to avoid paying a legitimate debt." "Your Honor," Yates spoke for the first time, his calm voice cutting through the chaos. "Last night, Mr. Bellamy and two armed men confronted us at the mine office. He admitted that the documents were forged and threatened our lives if we didn't cooperate." "Lies," Bellamy shouted. "This drifter has no standing here. He's obviously in league with Miss Grayson to defraud me." "I can attest to Mr. Whitlock's character," Sheriff Donovan stated firmly, "and to the fact that an attempt was made on both their lives last night. The bullet holes in the mine office wall confirm their account." Judge Harmon's expression had grown increasingly troubled as the evidence mounted. He studied the conflicting documents before him, then looked out at the packed courtroom, where the tide of public opinion was visibly turning against Bellamy. "This court finds itself in a difficult position," he announced finally. "There are serious allegations of forgery, conspiracy, and even attempted murder being presented. Such matters extend beyond the scope of a simple property dispute." He turned to Bellamy, his judicial mask slipping to reveal genuine distaste. "Mr. Bellamy, in light of these accusations and the evidence presented, I am suspending this hearing pending a full investigation by the territorial authorities." "You can't do that," Bellamy protested. "I have rights." "Indeed you do," Judge Harmon agreed coldly. "Including the right to defend yourself against criminal charges, should they be forthcoming. Until such time, the Grayson mining claim remains in Miss Grayson's possession, and your purported loan documents are considered suspect at best." The crowd's reaction was immediate and approving. Bellamy, seeing his carefully constructed plan crumbling before him, made a desperate move. With surprising speed for a man of his size, he lunged across the space separating him from Josephine, a small derringer appearing in his hand. "If I can't have the mine, no one will." He snarled, aiming at Josephine's heart. Several things happened simultaneously. Yates threw himself toward Josephine, Sheriff Donovan drew his revolver, and a deafening shot echoed through the courtroom. When the chaos subsided, Bellamy lay on the floor, clutching his shattered wrist, his derringer skittering away across the wooden planks. Sheriff Donovan stood with his smoking gun still aimed, his expression grimly satisfied. "Victor Bellamy," he announced formally, "you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and whatever else the territorial prosecutor decides to charge you with." As Donovan's deputies took the cursing Bellamy into custody, Yates helped Josephine to her feet. She was shaken but unhurt, her eyes wide with the realization of how close she had come to death. "It's over," Yates assured her softly. "He can't hurt you now." The following days brought a flurry of activity to Silver Creek. A territorial marshal arrived to take charge of Bellamy and begin a thorough investigation of his business dealings. Many prominent citizens, fearing association with his crimes, suddenly became cooperative witnesses, revealing a pattern of intimidation, fraud, and violence that had extended far beyond the Grayson mine. For Josephine, the vindication was bittersweet. Her father's reputation was restored, the mine secured, but the revelation that he had considered selling even with the best of intentions had forced her to reevaluate her understanding of his legacy and her own future. 1 week after the courthouse confrontation, she stood at the entrance to the mine, watching as workers returned to their jobs, the operations slowly resuming under her direction. "Copper," she said aloud as Yates approached, having sensed his presence without turning. "The future is in copper, not silver. That's what the engineer from Denver told me yesterday." "Is that so?" Yates asked, coming to stand beside her. Josephine nodded. "The silver vein is rich but limited. There's a massive copper deposit deeper in the mountain that could sustain operations for decades. My father suspected it, but didn't have the capital to explore properly." "And now?" Yates inquired. "Now I do," Josephine replied. "The bank in Helena has approved the loan, secured by the silver we can extract immediately. Within a year, we could be one of the largest copper producers in the territory." "Sounds like you've found your purpose," Yates observed, studying her profile against the afternoon sun. Perhaps, Josephine agreed, though it's not quite what I expected. She turned to face him directly. What about you, Yates Whitlock? Have you found yours? The question hung between them, weighted with unspoken possibilities. I've been thinking about that, Yates admitted. Sheriff Donovan offered me a job as deputy, says he could use a man with my experience. Are you considering it? Josephine asked, her voice carefully neutral. I've spent 8 years drifting, Yates replied thoughtfully. Running from my past, avoiding connections, never staying long enough to put down roots. And now I'm wondering if maybe it's time to stop running, he said softly, if maybe there's someone worth staying for. Josephine's breath caught as he reached out, gently taking her hand in his. I don't have much to offer, Yates continued. No land, no fortune, just a troubled past and an uncertain future, but if you'd allow it, I'd like to see where this path leads, together. Are you proposing to court me, Mr. Whitlock? Josephine asked, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth despite her attempt at formality. I believe I am, Miss Grayson, Yates confirmed, his own lips curving upward, though I warn you, I'm out of practice with such things. Then we shall learn together, Josephine decided, her fingers tightening around his. After all, we make a rather effective team, as recent events have proven. As the sun began its descent behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the valley, Yates Whitlock and Josephine Grayson stood hand in hand at the threshold of not just a silver mine, but of a future neither had imagined possible when fate had thrown them together on that blood-soaked road just 2 weeks earlier. In the months that followed, Silver Creek underwent a transformation. With Bellamy's corrupt influence removed, businesses flourished, miners received fair wages, and water flowed freely to the surrounding farms and ranches. The Grayson mine, under Josephine's progressive management, became a model operation, attracting investors and engineers from as far away as San Francisco. Yates settled into his role as Sheriff Donovan's deputy with surprising ease, his fair-minded approach to law enforcement earning him the respect of the townspeople. The nightmares that had plagued him since the war gradually receded, replaced by a sense of purpose and belonging he had thought forever beyond his reach. His courtship of Josephine progressed with deliberate care, both of them savoring the slow unfolding of their relationship. They would often be seen riding together on Sunday afternoons, attending church side by side, or deep in conversation at community gatherings. The town watched with approving interest as the unlikely pair, the refined mine owner and the taciturn former drifter, grew closer with each passing week. On a crisp autumn evening exactly 1 year after their first meeting, Yates led Josephine to a hilltop overlooking the valley, where he had prepared a simple picnic dinner. As the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, he took her hands in his. A year ago, he began, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain, I was a man without direction or purpose. I had nothing to offer anyone, least of all someone like you. Yates, Josephine started to protest, but he gently squeezed her hands, asking for her patience. Please let me finish, he requested. That day on the road, when I heard those shots and found you running for your life, something changed in me. It wasn't just about doing the right thing anymore. It was about finding something worth fighting for, worth living for. He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. I'm still not a wealthy man, Josephine. I can't give you the kind of life you deserve, but I can promise you this. I will love you, protect you, and stand beside you for as long as I draw breath. Opening the box to reveal a modest diamond ring, he asked simply, Josephine Grayson, will you marry me? Tears glistened in Josephine's amber eyes as she looked from the ring to the face of the man she had come to love with unexpected depth and certainty. Yes, she whispered, then more firmly, yes, Yates Whitlock, I will marry you. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, she added with characteristic practicality, and don't worry about wealth. Between your salary and mine, I believe we'll manage quite comfortably. Yates laughed, the sound free and unburdened in a way it hadn't been in nearly a decade. I've always admired your business acumen, Miss Grayson. Soon to be Mrs. Whitlock, she reminded him with a smile that lit her entire face. "The best investment I'll ever make," Yates murmured before drawing her into a tender kiss that sealed their promise to one another. They were married the following spring in Silver Creek's white clapboard church, with Sheriff Donovan standing as Yates's best man and Maggie Sullivan serving as Josephine's matron of honor. The entire town turned out for the celebration, which extended well into the night with dancing, feasting, and heartfelt toasts to the couple who had helped free Silver Creek from Bellamy's shadow. 5 years later, the Whitlock family had grown to include twins, a boy and girl named Connor and Catherine, whose laughter filled the spacious home Yates and Josephine had built on a hill overlooking both the town and the mine. Yates had eventually succeeded Donovan as sheriff when the older man retired, while Josephine continued to manage the mine, which had indeed become one of the largest copper producers in Montana Territory. On the 5th anniversary of their marriage, they stood together on the porch of their home, watching their children play in the yard below while the sun set over the valley they had both come to love. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" Josephine asked, leaning against her husband's sturdy frame. "If you hadn't happened upon that stagecoach that day," Yates considered the question, his arm tightening around her waist. "I believe some things are meant to be," he said finally. "I was lost for so long, searching for redemption, for purpose. And then there you were, this fierce, determined woman running from danger instead of toward safety." "I wasn't that brave," Josephine demurred. "I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear," Yates reminded her. "It's acting despite it. You taught me that. And you taught me that the legacy worth protecting isn't a mine or a deed," Josephine replied softly. "It's the people we love, the community we build, the difference we make while we're here." Below them, Connor shouted triumphantly as he climbed higher in the old oak tree, while Catherine busily arranged a collection of rocks by size and color, already showing signs of her mother's methodical mind. "They're going to change the world, those two," Yates predicted proudly. "They already have," Josephine agreed. "They've changed ours." As twilight deepened into night, stars appearing one by one in the vast Montana sky, Yates Whitlock reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him to this moment of profound contentment. From a rootless drifter haunted by his past to a man anchored by love and purpose, he had found in Josephine not just a partner, but a path to redemption. And Josephine, watching her husband's face in the gathering darkness, silently thanked whatever twist of fate had placed him on that road at that precise moment when she needed him most. Together, they had discovered strengths they hadn't known they possessed and built a life neither had dared to imagine possible. In the wilds of Montana Territory, where silver and copper lay hidden beneath rugged mountains, they had unearthed a treasure far more precious, a love forged in danger, tested by adversity, and destined to endure for all their days.